I have been thinking a lot about wells, having taught last week about Rivka at the well. In the desert world of the Bible, in ancient Israel, water is life. So, water wells are a life source. Imagine digging deep into the earth and discovering that there is life-giving water underneath the surface. It is a miraculous concept when I think about it. To work and to dig down to find what we need to survive. In this week's Parsha, Toldot, Yitzchak has grown up and married Rivka, and they have two sons, two twin sons, Yaakov and Esav, and Yitzchak has amassed a lot of wealth, including all the lands of his father Avraham, including a lot of wells, water wells. There is a famine, we read, yet Yitzchak is blessed by God, so his land performs 100 times better than expected. The local non-Israelites, the Philistines, envy him. We read, and the Philistines stopped up the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of his father Avraham, filling them with earth. Imagine losing a life-giving well like this. It would be, at this time, it would be devastating and dangerous to lose access to water in the desert. For just a minute, humor me. Let's imagine this experience in a visual or a tactile or auditory, however resonates the most. Let's imagine in an experiment, in a creative moment. Imagine that water is flowing way down below with just an opening. It's just enough to see the water moving and sparkling, and maybe we can hear the water way down underneath the earth. And then imagine the crumbling earth falling down slowly as the well fills up. Imagine watching this happen. What kind of noise would that earth make as it falls down into the water? Would the air be dusty from all the moving sand, all the tumult? As it builds and builds, as the men drop more earth down into the well and it starts to rise up to ground level eventually. Imagine this well is finally closed and stopped up with earth, packed down, ruined, erased. I find this imagery to be really haunting and resonant and emotional at this time. What do we do in these moments when it feels like we're choking on all the sand that just keeps falling down, and it's falling and it's falling, and we are more and more distant from our life source, from the flowing waters below that keep us alive and awake and energized and joyful? And what are we doing as maybe we feel some of that at this time? Yitzchak is no stranger to suffering, himself a survivor of early trauma, when his father Avraham almost sacrificed him at the altar. Yitzchak, quiet and wise, one who knows how to keep going, even in the darkest moments. What does he do when he sees that the earth just keeps on falling, and the wells are now stopped up and gone. I imagine that he takes a beat, takes a breath, maybe allows himself to have some feelings. But the Torah only says that he settles in and he starts rebuilding. He begins to redig the same wells that his father dug a generation before. Vayashav Yitzchak vayachpor et be'erot hamayim asher chafru b'yamei Avraham aviv vayisatmum plishtim acharei mot Avraham. Yitzchak dug anew the wells which had been dug in the days of his father Avraham, and which the Philistines had stopped up after Avraham's death. Vayikra lahen shemot kashmot asher kara lahen aviv. And he gave them the same names that his father had given them. He dug the wells anew and he gave them the same names. I invite us to think about and feel about, if we can, what it means to begin redigging wells. There is a teaching that I would love to share with you this morning from the Opter Rebbe, Avraham Yehoshua Heschel, a Hasidic master teacher from the late 18th and early 19th century in Poland and Russia. And in case you recognized the name, this is the great-great-grandfather of Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great theologian and philosopher. The Opter Rebbe, also known as the Ohev Yisrael, teaches that Yitzchak's redigging of the wells is a metaphor that we can use to understand the path to achieving intimacy and connection with God. And I will extend it to be intimacy and connection with whatever is our life source, our higher power, whatever gives us meaning and gives us life. He uses the word dvekut. This is a common term used in Hasidic texts. It's a Hebrew word that means clinging or clingingness or stickiness. And I'll share that whenever I encounter the word dvekut, I always think of one of the first object words that I learned in elementary school Hebrew class. So the word for glue, you know, the bottle of glue, like Elmer's glue with the white glue that, you know, gets all stuck on your fingers. The word for that is devek. So I always think of glue when I hear the word dvekut. And I don't think the meaning is that far off. Dvekut is spiritual Elmer's glue. I'll offer to you. Take it or leave it. The Ohev Yisrael teaches that just as a water well can be stopped up with dirt that prevents the flow of life-giving water from being accessible, so too can the human soul be stopped up with darkness and hiddenness that prevents our dvekut, our attachment, our connection, our intimate relationship with God and with all different kinds of holiness. He teaches that the tzaddik, the most righteous few among us, can achieve dvekut in a relatively straightforward way, through the performance of the mitzvot, the commandments, and in the light of the Torah. He teaches Or HaTorah v'HaMitzvot shebo poteach makor hanavio shel mayim chayim umedabek et atzmo leHashem yitbarach. In this way, the tzaddik's soul can be opened and the life-giving waters can be made to flow more freely. But the rest of us, the non-tzaddikim, have more that is blocking the flow of the holy waters. and preventing our dveikut, preventing our spiritual Elmer's glue from holding and sticking. So we can't feel that connection that we need. We might be limited, or we might be hiding behind anxieties and fears, and these are all very real. So to achieve dveikut, for us to become touching and close and connected to God and to any kind of source of holiness, we need more help. The Ohev Yisrael teaches that for us, then I'll count myself among the non-tzaddikim, that God uses midat gvura, the attribute of strength, and applies it to us in order to clear out the wells of our soul. I think of this as God will be tough on us, and it's for our own good. We need a little gvura. And it's a beautiful teaching. Beautiful and hard to apply. But I think we can expand it, and I think that we can access it, and I think we can find our own way to use it. Because we are all, to some extent, stopped up now, hunkering down for the winter, perhaps afraid of what's to come in the roller coaster of this extended pandemic. So whether or not God is tough on us, whether or not God shows strength in order to help us, I want to challenge us to think about how we can use our own strength to get ourselves unstuck. Can we respond to our stopped up wells by, as Yitzchak does, picking up a shovel and redigging them? What needs to be cleared out for us before we can open up the pathways to the source of life in our lives? What internal work needs to be done? What do we need to do to feel better about ourselves, to be more proud, to grow our self-respect? And what external work needs to be done? Do we need to make amends? Do we need to listen more? Do we need to care more? God willing, may we emerge from our digging projects renewed, if a little tired and dusty. And let us remember that although we are changing, and we will change in these times, there is a core of us that always remains. We can be afraid, but we must remember that we, and I mean the capital, most all-inclusive we, have done this before. Just like Yitzchak, we too are slowly redigging the wells of our ancestors. In particular, the Jewish people have known great suffering for thousands of years, for our entire history. And just like Yitzchak, we too will give the wells the same names that our ancestors named them, as we find again the flowing water beneath the surface. Finally. Amen. I wish that for us. Amen.